Next we have Mrs. Jeanne Dufort. And then after that, Jacqueline Elsner.
Jacqueline's with me in case I run a little bit over time to pick up the slack. I'm Jeanne Dufort from Morgan County. Superior Court Judge Rucker Smith said on Monday, it is not for this court to devise how best to configure the BMDs. Instead, it is the respondent's responsibility to comply with Georgia law. The respondents were the Sumter County Board of Elections. The case was about ballot secrecy and complying with the law using this new equipment. The judge affirmed the measured approach adopted by this board in January, that it fully intends to comply with the laws, as the law requires them to protect absolute ballot secrecy, observe all components of the equipment while polls are open, to prevent tampering, and to provide at least one voting booth for 250 electors on election day. This board tasked the election director with providing detailed plans for each polling place showing how these laws will be met. And today, as discussed, was the deadline. Let me be clear, the problems facing this election director are not of her making. The Secretary of State chose a ballot marking tablet with a fatal design flaw. The oversized screen is not equipped with a privacy filter that would prevent people behind or beside from seeing your choices. The Secretary of State chose a ballot marking system that requires more space. You can only fit 2 of them on a 6-foot table that once held 3 of the old voting systems. The legislature passed a law that requires every precinct to have 1 voting station per 250 electors, which is about 35% more than the last statewide election. So a precinct with 3,000 registered voters that had 9 voting stations set up with on 3 tables now needs 12 voting stations and 6 tables, plus more room for the new scanner and the new emergency ballot marking station, which, if you were told the same time as Jennifer, you were only told about at 4:30 last Friday night, that you need space for voters to mark emergency ballots in privacy. In past elections, voting stations were set up around the perimeter of a room facing the center, and in long rows, which was typically done because it's the most space-efficient way to lay out a polling place. But if you set up this new system that way, you have not protected ballot secrecy, and that's against the law. The Secretary of State, we saw this, recommends you pull the tables away from the wall, add space between every table, and turn the tables around to face the wall. Most precincts do not have the extra space, not for bigger machines, not for more machines, and not for machines spread further apart. They were designed, as was said earlier, for the old equipment. Besides, the minute you turn these around, with the blue privacy shielding them from view, you create the perfect opportunity for tampering to go unnoticed. Imagine 1 million pair of hands on election day across Georgia with unfettered access to 65,000 pieces of electronic equipment with data slots and cords. What could possibly go wrong?
Thank you.
She's got 2 paragraphs.
Is that the 30-second time, or is that you're done?
She's done.
Okay, I'm Jacqueline Elsner, 315 Caldwell Circle. Thank you. Athens, and I invite everybody who speaks to tell their name and address. Not everybody has. I'm a partner with Jeanne Dufort, and what we want to conclude, it's impossible in whole or part, or if it's impossible in whole or in part, or impracticable, the election board has the authority to set the ballot marking devices aside and conduct the election by hand-marked paper ballots. It's time to recognize that these are unsolvable problems, at least in the near term. It's time for Plan B, which is hand-marked paper ballots. I've listened, and one thing, I look at this layout and I go, where's the scanner? Where's the provisional ballot station? Where you've got to have the enclosed space. You've got to have privacy for the voters to move from their tablet to the scanner without anybody else seeing. And again, I just gotten training as a poll worker. These are very conscientious, hardworking, kind, patient people that are on our election staff. I have only wonderful things to say about y'all as employees. You've been handed an impossible situation, and this is not a joke that our ballot is secret. It is not something that we can throw out the window and say, oh, nobody's going to look at those screens. It's not about does person A not look, or please don't look. It's the law. And I would ask all 5 members of the board to take that into hand. And I appreciate this. But you've been asked to do something you cannot do. And I have listened to the meetings, and I will say, there are times when our well-meaning and organized election supervisor isn't really answering the question. Like, the question keeps being asked by different members because it's an incomplete answer. I say that with respect. But it's the truth. And it's not bullying, it's simply, please insist that a complete answer is given. Thank you.